Good evening, and welcome to all who have joined us live or viewing on the YouTube channel. I am Dr. Zipporah Miller, and facilitating this session with us tonight is Dr. Heidi Oliver Ogilvy and Mrs. Kathy Steen. We are all from the Division of Professional Growth and Development. Also with us is Mr. Bob Mosier, our Chief Communications Officer. I'd like our audience to know that we have some dignitaries who are with us and listening to this session tonight. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge the presence of Board of Education Vice President Dana Schalheim, Board Member Robert Silkworth, Board Member Dr. Joanna Bache Tobin, Board Member Michelle Corkadell. Thank you. We would like to begin by thanking you for investing your time with us this evening. Your feedback is invaluable. Anne Arundel County Public Schools is hosting a series of virtual listening tour sessions to garner information from parents, students, employees, and community members on how instruction and other aspects of school operations should look like as plans continue to be formulated for the 2021-2022 school year. A few weeks ago, our Superintendent, Dr. Arlotto, communicated his desire to hear input from all stakeholders regarding our thoughts on how instruction should look like as we move forward. He is seeking our collective ideas regarding the possibilities that lie ahead as we consider how to adapt the technological advances to in-person learning, and also how we best help students overcome the disrupted instruction for the past year. Let us take a few moments to hear some words from our superintendent, Dr. George Arlotto.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for being here for this session of our listening tour. A little more than a year ago, our collective world was turned upside down. The COVID-19 pandemic struck education suddenly and fiercely, and it changed the educational landscape forever. What we've collectively done over the last year plus is something of which we should all be very proud. There are those who say we've moved too slow. Others say we've moved too fast. But together, we have reinvented education in our county and, to the best of our ability and within the ongoing restrictions, done everything we could for every one of our students. Every single person in our school community, even when they have disagreed, has played a part in that, and I want to thank you. We stand on the edge of a new frontier now. In several short months, a new school year will be upon us. The questions for us are simple. How will we best utilize both the challenges and the successes of this pandemic to create better opportunities for our students in September? How will we best help them overcome disrupted education? And how will we make our classrooms better next fall than they were in March of 2020. We'll continue to focus on equity and access. All means all, with no exceptions. We will continue to focus on building relationships, on social and emotional wellness, on teaching and learning, and on maintaining rigor. In the fall, we'll be bringing students back 5 days a week for in-person learning. We are discussing limited all virtual options for students who will most benefit from them, but we are not planning any kind of hybrid instruction in the next school year. With that said, where do we go from here? We want your ideas. How do we best harness technology moving forward? What kinds of creative scheduling can we employ to assist our students? What have we done that you would like us to continue or to modify? What didn't work? What ideas haven't you heard discussed that you want us to know about? I'm absolutely confident that the plan we build moving forward will result in educational experiences better than the ones we have left more than a year ago. We need your help, your ideas, your input to do that. We are truly better together, and I thank you in advance for the critical insight you will provide in this discussion.
As we provide feedback, let us consider the following. How might we create learning spaces across our district that center and prioritize high quality learning for students and adults, social and emotional wellness, diversity, equity, belonging, and social justice? How might we explore and understand what it means to thrive at school and at work? How might we use all of the best practices implemented during at-home and hybrid learning? How might we eliminate practices that are antiquated and inequitable? How might we examine data to see opportunities for innovation, accountability, and improvement? How might we create hope and action to see amazing outcomes for all? Now, we will begin our public comment section. During this time, you will have the opportunity to provide feedback on the following topics: social emotional learning, equity, teaching and learning, schedules and resources. Please note, you are also able to provide comments using the feedback form located on our website at aacps.org/listening tour. Now, for each speaker that is signed up, your time is limited to 2 minutes. Keep your comments civil and appropriate for the audiences viewing this presentation, and stick to the topic. Mr. Mosier will let you know when your time has expired. The first segment of public comment will focus on social emotional learning. Anne Arundel County Public Schools uses the following definition for social emotional learning. The definition comes from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, also known as CASEL. The definition reads as follows: the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. At this time, there are no speakers signed up to speak on this topic. However, feel free to provide written comments using the feedback form. The next segment is focused on equity. Anne Arundel County Public Schools uses the definition for equity from the Maryland State Department of Education. The definition reads as follows: granting every student access to the opportunities, resources, and educational rigor they need throughout their educational career to maximize academic success and social emotional well-being, and viewing each student's individual characteristics as valuable. As we begin to speak, I will call our first speaker, who is Jessica Packler.
Hi, I'm sorry. Did you call my name? It went glitched. Is it Jessica Packler?
Yes, ma'am, Jessica Packler.
Sorry. When it switched me over, you must have been talking, and so I didn't hear you call my name.
No
Sorry.
problem. So you have 2 minutes.
All right. Dear Dr. Alato, staff, and Board of Education, thank you for hosting these listening tours. I hope that you truly are listening. We have been through an incredible thing over the last year, some of it incredibly painful, a lot of loss, a lot of changes. However, there's also been a lot of growth and a lot of learning. Thank you to all of the teachers and staff who has brought us through this. You are our heroes. As a mom of 4 kids who attend school in the Annapolis cluster, the issue of equity is never far from my mind. The schools in our cluster look different than most of the schools elsewhere in the county. We have different needs, we have different challenges, we have different benefits, we are different. It is what makes this cluster so wonderful, and it needs to be recognized and supported. I know the school system discusses equity on a regular, if not constant basis, but I asked you, as you focus on plans for next year, to truly look at equity on all levels, to make your decisions from the lens of those who need the most assistance. In doing so, you will create a net that captures everyone. If you are making decisions through the lens of families who have strong and consistent access to internet, who have parents who have jobs with health insurance and sick days, who have access to reliable personal transportation, who speak and read English, who are able to read, who have access to good computers, cell phones, and technology devices, who use email, you are missing out on a large portion of the students in our school system, and especially in the Annapolis cluster. There are many changes that can be made based on what we've learned this year. Changes in access to technology, change in transportation, changes that benefit the most in need and therefore everyone else as well. One of the biggest issues that many of our schools with a large opportunity gap is and has been attendance. Transportation is a barrier for many of our students, especially here in Annapolis, and this problem must be solved before school starts in the fall. Bus and walking radii that work elsewhere in the county do not work in the city, and they must be adapted to fit us. Transportation should never be a barrier to education. Then technology can and should be used to help with this if a child isn't able to make it into class for whatever reason. Because whether it be transportation, parental resources, or even because, and it still will be here, exposure to COVID, that child should be able to have access to the classroom using the readily available technology that schools use across the world, like 360-degree classroom cameras, appropriate microphones, etc. This would not be a hybrid situation like we're doing
Your
this
time has expired.
with teachers teaching to laptops, but a functional technology-based solution that allows students. It is difficult to get through everything in 2 minutes, but I ask more than anything else that as you move forward, you make the decisions based on expertise, facts, science, and reason, and not politics and the shouts of a vocal minority of our population. You are the leaders of our system, and many of us have no choice but to put our trust in the safety, health, and welfare education of our children in your hands. Please gain back that trust from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Laura Booth.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. If we have learned one thing this year, it's that virtual learning works. Not for all students, but many, like my high school senior, have found that their grades improved this year. So as you make plans for this coming year, please make sure there are enough seats for all students who choose virtual instruction. A student should not have to have a 504 or an IEP to access the learning format that gives them the best chance of success. Our teachers have mastered the virtual learning format this year. So I urge you to use that to reduce our dependency on MVLO classes in our high school. Maryland Virtual Learning Opportunities classes are frequently used to provide access to classes that are not being offered in the school building. In an MVLO class, a student logs into a website to asynchronously access course materials. We have learned this year that synchronous classes, in which a student can ask questions, interact with our amazing teachers, and build relationships with their peers, give students a better chance of success than an asynchronous class that students must complete on their own. MVLO classes are self-paced. So a student can earn an A on every assignment, yet still fail the class if they fail to complete all the classwork by the deadline. Lastly, MVLO classes are inherently inequitable. In order to enroll in an MVLO class, parents must sign a form agreeing to pay up to $450 if their student fails or drops that class. This is a risk that many of our families simply cannot afford to take. So as we look to next year, wouldn't it be so much better if, instead of logging onto a website in Florida, if AACPS students could join a virtual class taught by one of our amazing AACPS teachers located in a different AACPS high school? Let's save the MVLO classes for when we truly do not have an AACPS teacher qualified to offer it. Equity is about giving each student his or her best chance of academic success. I urge you to keep these considerations in mind as you plan for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker on this topic is Mark Flores.
Dr. Miller, Mr. Flores is not signed in at this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Mosier. So we will move on to the next segment. The next segment addresses teaching and learning. Anne Arundel County Public Schools designed a research-based framework known as the Teaching and Learning Cycle. This document provides us with a common language and vision around effective instruction. The framework outlines practices in the following areas: planning for learning, teaching for learning, and assessing for learning. So now we'll move on to the first speaker in this topic, and that would be Shannon Ledbetter.
Good evening. I am going to speak in bullet points tonight to make the most of my time. I collected some suggestions from teachers, students, and parents in my community, and I'm going to do my best to share the ones that came up the most often. In elementary and middle school, we need gap closers for math and reading intervention. Is it possible to train volunteer parents to come in and help close those gaps for learners who struggled in virtual, instead of labeling those who are behind as special needs and pushing them to the special education department that is already overburdened? We need a way to level our classes. Our students' learning needs are going to be more diverse than ever. Differentiation for gifted and intervention for the struggling was a lot for teachers before COVID hit. With a class size of 35 kids, what support can we as a school system give teachers so that the fast above grade level learners aren't lost in the mix and bored on a daily basis, while our learners who are struggling are brought up to speed? Maybe we need to go back to leveling classes again to take some of the burden off our teachers and allow all of the attention our children get be appropriate for where they are in their learning process so that they can succeed. High school student engagement. These kids are used to sleeping in, ordering Jimmy John's for lunch, playing video games on breaks, and when they finish work or get bored in the class, they jump online. They have lost organizational skills, communication skills, and socialization skills. We need a plan to engage them. Otherwise, all teaching and learning is not going to be effective. Parents are asking for us to stop relying on technology. Elementary kids need to learn how to spell without using spell check. Some of them need to learn how to write. And does a Chromebook really serve the needs of a child in the grades K through 2? And lastly, I'm going to bring up public speaking. Very appropriate. It's an important skill in life. And over the past 18 months, granted unusual circumstances, there really hasn't been an opportunity for students to stand in front of their peers and be seen eyeball to eyeball and engage in public speaking and learn that skill. This needs a place in our curriculum so that our students, particularly our secondary students, are prepared to go forth into the employment world, the college world.
Your time is expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Saylor.
Good evening and welcome into our office / guest room / classroom / first graders art studio. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit about our experience this year and our hopes for next year. The virtual environment has worked extraordinarily well for our daughter and our family, just as it has for countless other families. We have seen substantial leaps both socially and emotionally, as well as intellectually this year, with the added bonus of accelerated computer literacy. Not that this should come as a surprise to anyone, given the fact that distance learning is and has been a viable and effective learning modality for almost 2 decades. I'm only sorry it took the pandemic for us to begin leveraging it. It has also given students an opportunity to form connections and build relationships with their teachers and classmates. This connection has made their reentry into the classroom much smoother. I want to commend all of you for the extraordinary work that you have done and continue to do to make this positive experience possible. One of the reasons I wanted to speak tonight is because as we look to next year, I find myself in a conundrum. I cannot in good conscience send my child back to school until she is fully vaccinated, but fully intend for her to return to in-person learning once she has been. I know I am not alone in this, but no virtual option that meets this need has been planned for the fall as of yet. With that in mind, I would like to ask that you would consider continuing the current homeschool virtual option. I know this is not ideal, but we are not yet living in ideal times, especially for those who do not have access to the vaccine. It would not be forever, and it would allow you to dictate when students return to class, whether it be at the end of the quarter or the semester, and that would allow for there to be the least amount of disruption as possible as students re-enter the classroom. As it stands now, approximately 50% of families have decided to remain virtual this year. That is too large of a number to ignore when planning for next year. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I want to send a huge shout out to our amazing teachers, staff, and administrators. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Kristen Caminetti.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Dr. Arlotto and his staff for arranging these listening tours. I think this is a great initiative and one I hope to see you use more and more in the future to gather input from the community in a collaborative way. I also want to take this opportunity to thank teachers, administrators, and all staff members within AACPS for the tremendous amount of work you have all put in this year to make what is likely the most challenging year of your educational careers as meaningful as possible for students. We see you, and we are very, very grateful. My children are better people because of each of you. Thank you. Teaching and learning is the topic I selected to speak on. That really narrows it down. But I think my priorities around this topic can be summed up in 3 statements. 1, students cannot learn without teachers who feel valued and respected. If we want students to effectively learn, we must start by effectively caring for our teachers. This starts at the top with our Board of Education and must trickle all the way down to parents and students. I had a conversation with my then 4-year-old son a few years ago about the most important job. He decided on teachers because, in his words, without them, no one would be good at any other job. Let's start treating our teachers as the invaluable resource they are. 2, students learn most effectively when their unique learning styles are valued and respected. This year required everyone to think outside the box. Some kids learned they thrive learning virtually, while others now know they need that in-person interaction. Let's keep being creative and flexible in meeting students' needs so that all students succeed. 3, students must feel safe in order to learn. Safety has been an issue of utmost importance during the COVID-19 crisis, and I hope we don't forget the importance of safety and continue to require masks in all schools with children who are not yet eligible for vaccination. But I hope our focus on safety continues well into the future. Our LGBTQ+ students must feel safe. Our Black students must feel safe. Our students with disabilities must feel safe. We often talk about how crucial using an equity lens is when developing new policy and regulation, and it is so important, but we must also start by overlaying with a safety lens. As Maslow taught us so many years ago, our safety needs are paramount to our social, emotional, education, and mental wellness needs. Let us never forget this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Latika Hicks.
I'm sorry. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm here. Thank you. I'm sorry. Trying to get this stuff together. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Arlotto and staff, for offering us the opportunity to weigh in on the plans for the upcoming school year. These listening sessions are important, and I hope that you will hear us, especially during a year with a lot of ups and downs and uncertainties. I want to thank all the teachers and staff for their resilience and creativity during this difficult year. We greatly appreciate you. With that in mind, I'm deeply concerned that if everything stays on a positive course and we are able to fully open in the fall, we will forget all of the things learned this year and fall back to the status quo. The pandemic has showed us us what is deeply wrong with our educational system. It also showed us what is possible if we are open to change. We must take advantage of all available options and implement new strategies. In other words, there is no going back to normal. We must move forward. That means incorporating the technology and access to that technology, continuing with virtual learning option that doesn't penalize the child. Virtual academy students should not be excluded from other activities at their zone school like sports or graduation. Both of my children who are middle schoolers thrived in virtual school. They were able to focus on their schoolwork without the distractions and were fortunate enough to have a parent at home to support them. I realize that this is not possible for some families, and that is why options are so important. I want to see AACPS provide a variety of instructional approaches to meet individual student learning needs. I want to see evidence-based interventions to address learning loss, not only in the form of remedial learning, but finding out what the child needs are, provide the support like homework help and tutoring, coupled with high expectations, and then support for teachers to help them bring the students up to their level. Also, a safe learning environment. None of the things I mentioned so far would work if students and teachers don't feel that they are in a stable physical structure and that the environment is inclusive and welcoming to all students. Since the COVID-19 vaccination will not be included as part of the required vaccinations, mask is a simple way to protect students and staff as the vaccinations become available for all ages. Finally, all of the plans should not be limited to just this upcoming school year. We need long-term plans that measure individual student progress, as well as a way to assess the effectiveness of all programs and initiatives. And finally, I would like for us to remember to extend as much grace as possible to our students and our families and our teachers, as well as the other staff. Patience should be our guiding factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Greg Nagurka.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having this virtual tour. I appreciate the time. Thank you, Dr. Arlotto and the board. It's been a long time, a long year for everyone. And as everyone's already stressed, very difficult. I don't have any written talking points. I just want to stress some of the experiences I had. A first grader in elementary school, and his kindergarten year was cut off. First grade was all virtual, now hybrid. And what you guys did on last Wednesday was what I was hoping for, is having some more outside the box thinking in the COVID-19 restrictions. I feel that there's a lot of kids my son's age that need to have that in-person learning, and that was probably hard to achieve in the hybrid learning and of course in the virtual learning environment. If there's a way to ensure or establish that we have that in-person learning 5 days a week, and to please address having the laptops not part of the curriculum in kids K through 2. I felt that the laptop computer was not age appropriate for our son. I don't think that he was able to manipulate it well. We had to constantly help him through that process to this day. Also tutoring. I know that there was potentially some offering of tutoring. We had to hire an off-duty Anne Arundel County teacher to tutor our son. So I would hope. There's a lot of grant funds out there. There's a lot of funding out there. If there's any possibilities to have that in-person tutoring available in the school next year, that would be helpful to help achieve any gaps with children. Also, the parent-teacher surveys. I know a lot of us took those, and I feel that they were very helpful. But also, I think a lot of the parents, such as myself, feel that doing the survey may not have accomplished what we voted on, right? So if somehow we could have a better way of accounting for those surveys, and if they the results of them truly reflect what AACPS chooses to do, that would be much more helpful. And last and finally, going into the second grade, I think my son, he's definitely looking forward to it. We appreciate all the teachers, what they've done. It is a very, very tough year, and what Tracy's Elementary did for our son is truly amazing. So I want to just thank everyone for that, and thank you for this opportunity and time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Jenny Sprigg.
Dr. Miller, she is not signed in.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. So before we move on to the next segment, I'd like to call up Mark Flores, who will be speaking on equity.
Good evening. I just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to weigh in on different aspects of our children's education. As someone who's following along on what's going on at the political or national level, just when I see equity, I get a little concerned that in certain theories that are put out there, it seems to be some reverse discrimination. My concern is that it reaches down into what our children, how they're affected, how they're taught, how they're touched. I absolutely believe that the best in every child needs to be brought out. As a speaker spoke earlier about individual learning styles, they're unique to every child, but I just, when I see equity, I'm not sure what the school system has in mind with equity. If it's about bringing that out, I think that's great, but if it's somehow weighing in against or making access to things more available to children of another race or culture, then I have concerns about it, and that's all I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will move to the final segment, which addresses scheduling and resources. And as we think about scheduling and resources, think about how do the school's schedule support our students' needs. Our first speaker for this segment is Danielle Sokol.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. I'm sorry my video doesn't work, but I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to speak. A quick thank you to all the students and staff members at South River High School and Central Middle School who have been so kind to our family throughout the past year and a half. I am the parent of two Anne Arundel County Public School students, a 7th grader attending Central Middle and a 10th grader attending South River. Both of my children attended Central Elementary for a certain period of time, as well as Central Middle School. My eldest child went through the normal 3 full years at Central Middle School and was regularly absent at least 2 weeks per year in aggregate due to the normal viruses and illnesses that typically spread during the colder months. My younger child began at Central Middle School during the 2019-2020 school year and only went through 1 winter. Nevertheless, she missed a similar number of days. I have always had serious misgivings about the overcrowding at Central Middle School. And at this juncture, I have no desire to send my 7th grader back to Central Middle School for her 8th grade year, should the 2021-2022 school year mirror pre-COVID scheduling. With the goal of lessening the number of students in a building at any one time, as well as giving families greater flexibility in their educational choices, I'm advocating for an optional hybrid system that allows for both online live and asynchronous classes, as well as in-person classes. Furthermore, I would like the option for rolling start dates and year-round school to allow for less intense daily class loads, but continued education throughout the year, especially at the elementary school level. Though my children are past it, I know that in-person was ideal for them at that time. To see a current functional model of what I'm asking for, please do reference the Florida Public School answer to the flexible alternative. Please do note, I'm not comparing the quality of education, just the delivery model. I know every family situation is different. A more flexible schedule would allow for more time spent engaging in activities such as sports, family time, travel, or other extracurricular activities that are not purely academic, but may be just as valuable in the long-term growth of an individual child.
Your time has expired.
Post-COVID, I do not believe that insisting education take a specific form is in anyone's best interest. Flexible education alternatives would allow families to make choices that are best serving their individual children and situations. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I do sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Tamara Beeger.
Good evening, board members. Regarding scheduling, I think we have seen the benefits of the midday break during hybrid learning. I would ask the board to consider extending elementary recess to at least 30 minutes of playtime. Students are flourishing with the extra time to decompress, burn energy, and socialize with peers. As far as I know, there are no breaks for middle schools. Please consider establishing a recess break time to allow middle school students the opportunity to get academic help from teachers, socialize, or take part in academic activities. The current 25-minute lunch period barely gives them time to get to the cafeteria, purchase and eat lunch before the next class period. For high schools, some high schools have an entire Pride Hour, known as Bruin Block or Wildcat Hour, for example, which allows students plenty of opportunity to participate in clubs and other non-academic activities, as well as receive academic support during school hours. Students at schools that do not have this continuous hour are not able to use the time effectively to get the help they need and participate in extracurriculars. I urge the board to maintain this Pride Hour at all current high schools and establish Pride Hour at all remaining high schools. This hour block in their schedules will benefit students academically as well as their mental health. Please don't take this Pride Hour away. I know we've circled the topic over and over, but I also urge the board to consider pushing for a later high school start time. I have 2 children starting in the fall, and I'm deeply concerned about the super early and unhealthy start time, especially with a 40-minute commute to a magnet school. And lastly, regarding school resources, our teachers are our greatest resource, and we must show them respect as professionals. Next year, the board should focus on partnering with teachers and staff by improving communications and showing them greater support rather than making them the blame for our school district issues. Teachers are not responsible for planning shortfalls, transportation shortfalls, budgeting shortfalls, staffing shortfalls, curriculum and planning shortfalls, or other shortfalls that are out of their control. Our board needs to rebuild its relationship with our educators and restore the faith. Without them, our children return to empty classrooms. I thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Polly Kremarski.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know if my video is on. There we go.
Your video is
Hi.
on now and we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My son came home from school today from this will be his first week, 4 days in class, and we're super excited and feeling very, very hopeful for the fall and for the rest of the few weeks left. I just have kind of a list form of a wish list per se for the fall. Sounds like some of these boxes are already checked. The 5 days per week, a more regular class schedule. This year, some of the classes were cut short quite frequently due to subs and things like that. More actual class time, learning time in person with teachers and students. We would ask that the virtual academy should be a separate program with different teachers. My son requests to be able to eat in the cafeteria with the food that they had pre-COVID. I can't speak to that myself, but that was his wish for me to say. Clubs and sports is normal. I love the idea that Tamara mentioned about extending lunch to accommodate clubs and extra help. No masks if that's appropriate and safe in the fall, but especially added mental health resources and support. We really don't know what the effects of this past year and a half are going to have. And then also that the kids might need a little extra security as they learn to share space again. There's no way that they wouldn't need a little adjustment there. And that emotions might be a little all over the place and trying to adapt. But I can tell you from what I saw today, I'm extremely thankful for the 4 days, even though it's for a few weeks, it really made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker on this topic is Lisa Van Buskirk.
Good evening, Lisa Van Buskirk of Start School Later, Anne Arundel County. The virtual academy schedules posted yesterday are quite different from the school year's virtual 8:30 start time, which hit the sweet spot for 3rd through 12th graders of 8:30 a.m. So why is the virtual academy start time so different? When we talk about in-person school scheduling, we must acknowledge that from the time the students awaken until the time they fall asleep, Directly and indirectly, most of a student's day is driven by the school schedule. Parents and caregivers are responsible for healthy bedtimes, but it is school transportation and bell times which most often drive wake times for all ages. Is the wake time appropriate for the age group? Is there time between when students awaken and when they depart for school for them to eat breakfast? Or have students slept as late as possible due to the misalignment with their sleep cycles and school schedule, thus skipping an important meal? Upon arrival at school, are students waiting for doors to open because of inefficient transportation routes, depositing them at school 30 to 40 minutes before the bell or 15 to 20 minutes before the door is open? Once the doors do open, is there time to eat breakfast? Does the start time of the first class of the day align with the optimal time for learning for the student's age group? When is lunch relative to wake and school start times? Are students tired during the day because their best hours for learning were before their late starting elementary began? When the final bell rang, were students waiting for buses? Teen crime is documented to spike in the hours after school releases. While there are many activities after school that could provide students with meaningful engagement, are there activity buses available later in the afternoon to allow more students the opportunity to participate with safe transportation home at the end of the day? If students do participate in sports or activities, when do they start and when do they end? Not all coaches or activity staff work at the high schools, but must travel from their jobs elsewhere. Therefore, some sports and activities start as late as 5 o'clock. During 2-hour early dismissals, students must depart campus. Why are school-sponsored sports and activities allowed to exceed the time limits the state of Maryland would otherwise enforce on working students? Thus, from wait time to the end of activities, sports, and homework, Anne Arundel County Public School drives the daily schedule of its 85,000 students and their families, plus all of the teachers and staff. I strongly encourage AACPS to holistically evaluate their impact on student schedules and make decisions that significantly improve student physical and mental health, safety, and academics. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have come to the end of the listening tour session for today. We would like to thank you again for participating in this listening tour. Please take the time to provide additional comments using the feedback form that's located on our website at aacps.org/listening tour. And that should be seen on the screen as well. A sample form is also on the screen. We would like to thank you again. Have